right, welcome everyone to episode 2 of The Legacy Den. I am one of your handsome hosts, Mason Losh, and with me as always is my buddy Rob. What's going on,
Hey,
Rob?
how's it going, Mason?
It's going pretty well. I'm doing lovely tonight. I've decided to kick back with a glass of wine. How about yourself?
I have some super dry Asahi, the good stuff.
Sounds delicious.
It very much is delicious.
All right. Okay, so in our last episode, we talked a little bit about the start of Magic, and I, of course, started in the RTR block, and you mentioned that you started way back in 4th edition. However, you took a break from Magic. I back in the olden days, I played a different card game. I played the Star Wars TCG game, and I now kick myself because I could have been opening packs of Urza block. And that Star Wars game never went anywhere. But I assume that with your 4th edition experience, you kind of went away from Magic, but then kind of came back to Magic. So I was wondering if you'd be willing to tell the audience a little bit about what made you come back to Magic.
All right, well, first I have to say why I stopped playing Magic.
Okay.
So I played Magic through elementary school and up through high school. I stopped when I was 16 around Onslaught block. The reason I stopped was because my other hobby, which is fighting games, kind of took precedence. I had to pick, was I going to use my weekdays and weekends to play fighting games competitively or to play Magic competitively? As a high school student, I just didn't have much money. So I really felt that I couldn't play Magic competitively. It just wasn't worth it in the long run. And the finance of those days wasn't quite like it is today, where you can go online and check prices of things and see where things are spiking.
There wasn't a list for Black Lotuses, and you couldn't just track the prices going back then.
Right. So I couldn't really tell what to hold on to and what to get rid of. I would just buy cards that are standard legal that were expensive, or hope to open them in packs, because when you're 14, 15, you buy a lot of packs because that's the easiest way for a chance to get a really expensive card. And back in those days, I just didn't have enough parts to build a standard deck. It just wasn't going to happen. And I wasn't very good at draft because I was only 14 or 15. Couldn't even enter that many drafts on lunch money, So I chose to play fighting games competitively. And that's why I stopped playing Magic for quite a long time. What got me back into Magic was after I moved here to Japan, a group of my friends said, "Oh yeah, so we went to a card store, and do you guys remember Magic the Gathering? I used to play back in college." And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, my roommate used to play back in college." So I was like, "Yeah, I played a long time ago. I still remember the rules easily." And they're like, "Well, these packs are really cheap. They're discounted to only like $1.50 a pack." I was like, "Why don't we just get 3 packs per person and just draft them?" I said, "Okay." So we started drafting Magic, and it was actually a blast. The set that we drafted, Dark Ascension. They were
that would explain why they were $1.50 a pack.
Yeah. It was like the Dragon's Mace at the time, I guess. I didn't know. Like right now, looking back, Dark Ascension isn't that bad. It has Thalia, it has Grafdigger's Cage, Mikaeus, Deathrite Shaman was RTR, but still. Somehow we got packs of RTR also.
I think the chase mythic of that set was Huntmaster of the Fells, who was like a $25 card or something like that. He was played in the Jund list back in Standard.
The Sorin Planeswalker too. And actually the funny part is so we got these $1.50 packs expecting nothing, and we opened up every good card actually. But at the time they weren't worth anything because that's why the packs were only $1.50. But I remember I opened a pack, it had both Huntmaster and it had the Sorin Planeswalker in it. And I'm like, man, this is why drafting is the best. Because now I have to decide, do I take the best creature, which is the flip one, or do I take this amazingly good Planeswalker? And that was great. So I took Huntmaster. But, we kind of had fun doing that. And then, we took the packs, I resealed them, got some little baggies from the 100 yen store, and drafted again. And that was really fun. Then a friend of mine, our mutual friend Alex, was like, "Oh yeah, we played this format called EDH. I was like, oh, I know EDH. That's what my other friend was talking about. It's, you just build a gigantic deck with a bunch of really, really, like bomb ass cards, and
Yeah.
you have a commander, and everything's got to be in that color, and you just do the brokest thing possible, and each player's trying to do their broke thing, and it sounds like, fun while having drinks and hanging out with friends. And it was EDH that I got back into, and then
It
we,
was a slippery slope from there.
well, I played EDH. I only had an EDH deck, and you guys that I met through our EDH group were playing, Modern and Legacy, and I was like, man, I kind of want to play Legacy. Looked at that Enchantress deck, and I was like, that looks sweet. I'm like, I know if I start playing Legacy, it's going to be a slippery slope. I'm going to get super, super into it. I'm going to buy everything. I'm going to buy a ton of duels. I know it's going to go nuts. I'm not going to buy one deck and be happy with that because I know how I am.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I bought Enchantress. I bought into it real quick, ordered all the parts I needed. And then my friend Alex was buying the Death and Taxes at the same time. This is when Caracases were worth, $150 each at the time. And then our other friend had Jund put together. So we kind of had a few decks. Then I built Painter. And then all of a sudden I decided I want to play blue. And I got some Jaces. And I built Miracles. And I'm like, not enough. So I bought Shardless. And I got some Tarmogoyfs, which are $200 each at the time too. So it was a completely slippery slope, which led eventually into me picking up Power 9 and starting to play Vintage. So,
Well, there's something that you said not too long ago that it kind of reminds me of what you talked about before, and that was the whole idea that like you've played a lot of different games. You are a hardcore gamer. You like fighting games. You like a whole bunch of video games and stuff like that. Um, I'm not so much of a gamer. I was a big fan of like RPGs and like, kind of violent games and whatnot, but I only just played by myself, on my own. But as a gamer, you told me that of all the games that you have played, Magic is by far the best. And I think it's sort of a testament to how the card game works, that it is such an in-depth and complex game in and of itself that it catches your attention and it just holds it, and you just stay addicted to the game for so long that past a certain point you've blown thousands of dollars and you don't even realize it because you've just enjoyed playing the game for so long. And that's sort of what got me hooked, because we played EDH and then we started kind of moving into standard. We were busting open, Return to Ravnica packs and using the cards to play with the EDH, and then, buying singles and, buying whatever we wanted. But past a certain point, we started looking at the standard decks, and Alex and a couple of the other guys, we started, thinking, well, maybe we'll start playing standard. And up until the rotation, I liked standard. But then at the rotation, when the new set came out, I immediately lost interest and I didn't
yeah,
want to play anymore. And so that's what got me into modern. And then once several bannings happened, I was like, you know what, screw this. I don't want to deal with any bannings anymore. And so then on to Legacy. And so that's what sort of got me hooked on Legacy. And I refuse to give it up because it's just so much it's so much fun.
yeah, that's the thing with Standard is that a lot of people share that same sentiment where not only is the deck that they're enjoying completely gone forever, because once something's out of Standard, you never play it again. Like,
Return to Ravnica and Innistrad Standard was so much fun. It was such there was a new deck every week. There was so many different archetypes. It was a lot of fun. But then once Theros block came out, like everything devolved into what was it, Mono Blue Devotion and Mono Black
that's
Devotion.
right. I remember
And
the
it
the
was
Spectre.
so utterly
Yep.
boring to watch, and you're like, why are we even playing this game anymore? So
Yep. And there are some standards that are better than others. And yes, people can say, well, why don't you just play Innistrad block constructed? But it's like nobody plays that. I don't want to play formats that literally only I play. I could play Frontier if I'm going to do that. But and that's the problem with Standard is that if there's a deck that you really, really liked, you never get to play it again. Even on
Yeah.
Arena, I don't get to play the Scarab God decks anymore. I will never use Scarab God again. That card was extremely
Well,
fun to use, extremely bomby, but it's gone in standard. I will never see that deck again.
you might, you might. They're looking
I
at a
mean,
new Eternal format right now.
that's true, of course.
But that's another topic for another day. Let's bring this around though, because I wanted to connect this main theme of returning back to Magic to our title, the name of our podcast, and why we are calling ourselves the Legacy Den. So, Rob, tell me, what is the Den?
Okay, well, the Den is short for Den Den Town, which is kind of like Osaka's version of Akihabara. So, for those who don't know, Akihabara is the electronic district in Tokyo. It's essentially where all the otaku and all the nerds go to hang out. There's tons of game stores, there's tons of arcades, and most importantly for us, there's tons of card stores. And by I mean tons, I'm not saying there's like 5 or 6. I mean, there's at least 25 card stores in Akihabara. And and I'm not talking stores that sell packs of Magic. I'm talking stores that sell singles. There are at least 25 stores in this, 2 block radius that sell Magic singles, which is
Yeah.
mind blowing when you think about it. How do they compete with each other? Well, they just do because so many people go there to buy cards. There's just so much business, even if there's other stores selling literally the exact same thing for maybe a cheaper price even. And
And yeah, one of the good things is so many of the play spaces that they have, because they have a lot of different tournaments that they run from week to week and day to day. And so if you're looking for a game or you're looking for other people to play, it's always a great place to hang out.
yep. And so the Osaka version it doesn't have as many stores as the Akihabara version, but it still has quite a few. There's at least 12, 13, 14, and again, like a 2 or 3 block radius. And one of them is even owned by a pro player, Tamara Ryuichi. He's he got second place at, I believe it was Zendikar or Battle for Zendikar Pro
I
Tour,
think, yeah, that might have
something
been
like that.
Pro Tour Battle for Zendikar, yeah.
And so there's quite a few places to play there. There's quite a few places to shop there. And it's kind of, especially for Magic, it's just a big hub in Osaka. And one reason I actually like it better than in Akihabara is that it's smaller, so it's more compact. It's easier to kind of go from store to store. When you want to check prices of things and really get the best deal, in Akihabara it takes a long time to go everywhere to all the stores, but it takes much less time in the Osaka version. And all the stores in Akihabara tend to be on like the 6th, 7th, 11th floor. So you have to take elevators or walk up a bunch of stairs. But a lot of the ones in Denden Town are on the 1st or even 2nd floor. There's one store that's on the 6th floor. But
Yeah.
aside from that, most of them are their own building. So it's really
Well, but
convenient.
even the one on the sixth floor, I was gonna say even the one on the sixth floor is like one of the better ones, since they pretty
It's
much
actually
have
the
their own drinking
best
area
one.
and
Yeah.
place to eat food.
It's the best one. They have a dedicated Magic the Gathering only play space. So they have like 50 or 60 seats on the other side of the store. And then they have this area, which they originally started charging money for, but nobody paid money for it because it was too expensive. So they just turned it into like a tournament area. But then they realized on these days when we're not using it for tournaments, and Magic is extremely popular, why don't we just turn this into the Magic the Gathering area? And they did. And that's the best place to play. I love hanging out there and playing. The guys who work there, some of them are pro players. There's a couple pro players who actually work at that store. They're like in charge of the Magic area. So everyone's really knowledgeable. It's really fun. The seats are really nice. The tables are big and wide. And the tournaments are very well run with really, really good prizes. So we're, as players in Osaka, we're in love with Denden Town and its amazing card stores. So
Yep.
and of course the legacy part of Legacy Den is pretty self-explanatory because Legacy is the format that kind of brought us all together. We play Magic because we love Legacy first and foremost. Like Modern would have kept me kind of playing it, but really the reason I'm as big into it now is because of the format Legacy. And
Yeah. I don't think that I mean I played Modern for a long time, but after it moved from like fair decks to more degenerate decks, and it just became I'm not going to interact with my opponent. I'm just going to, play my own thing. And I wasn't a fan of that. I wanted interaction. I wanted decisions, having different things to decide.
well,
And that's
we have
precisely why I love Legacy.
yeah, well, Modern has Horizons to look forward to, and that's another topic for another day.
Indeed. So we are the Legacy Den
Yes,
podcast.
the Legacy Den podcast.
All right. So we had a recent big event this last weekend. What was that big event?
GP, I mean Magifest Kyoto. So Kyoto is the next prefecture over from Osaka.
MF in Kyoto.
Good old Kyoto. There's tons of foreigners there. It's a really nice, calm place. The location of the tournament was a little difficult to get to, but overall, the hall was big enough. I never felt like there were not enough seats. I felt like there was always somewhere I could sit down, and that's really the most important thing. But so first off, let's talk about the tournaments at Kyoto. It was main event was standard. You did not enter. I did not enter, but there were side events, tons of side events that were very, very well run. So,
Yep.
let's talk about the difference in how they were run this year versus the last GP. So
I don't think I entered into any of the side events at the last GP, but maybe you could handle that.
yeah, so at the last GP, it was usually 4 rounds for a tournament, like a legacy tournament. And the way it worked is that, first place would get this much, and second place would get this much, third, this. And the way it worked was if you guys wanted to split, like one person actually had to write like, okay, first place, like 12 points because I get this many packs, 9 points because this many packs. And getting a draw didn't give an in-between. You got less if you guys both drew. So let's say 9 points gives 10 packs and 12 points gives 20 packs. 10 points a draw should give 15 because that's in the middle, but it would give something like 12. So of course the best option is for one person to say, okay, I win, you lose, but let's go together and then we'll split the packs after. This time they actually made it so that way the 2-0-1 was exactly halfway in between 2-1 and 3-0. So 3-0's prize was 18 packs. 2-1's prize is 6 packs. In between that is 12 packs. So if you guys both drew, you can split it completely evenly without having to like have one person take a prize and like split it yourself. You can just write it on the paper. It's much easier.
That seems like it's a little bit better, can't be abused or have somebody taken advantage of. So I did not know about that last year. That sounds like a pain in the butt from last year.
And the promo that they gave this time, they give you lightning bolt promos if you join the more expensive event, which is great. Those promos are really cool.
Yeah.
And the cheaper ones, you still get a promo basic land, which is it's okay. It's better than nothing. But because they're only 3 rounds, they actually have a lot more tournaments. You can actually join more events. Whereas when it's 4 rounds, you kind of have to dedicate quite a lot of your day to that, if not your whole day. Or you have to just get there extremely early if it starts that early. And what they also did to make it different was then because they had like generic 3-0 tournaments, they had a couple tournaments that are 4 or 5 rounds, depending on the participants. So if you have like 128 legacy players and it's 5 rounds, that's where like the really, really hardcore players will go to play because that's where the bigger prizes are. But the best part about the 3-0 tournaments is that there's no limit to how many people can enter. Before it was like only 100 people can enter this tournament. But because if you go 3-0, you get the max prize. They can have as many people join as they want. They had plenty of space for everybody. So there's literally no issues with that. I never had to worry about, oh man, am I going to make it? Do I have to wait in a really long line and get there and camp overnight in order to just enter a tournament? Like that was kind of a problem in the past couple of years. There were lines going outside. We don't have to worry about that this year.
Yeah.
So,
I remember a long time ago, I don't know if it was Kyoto. I remember entering some side events where like the prizes were like boxes and whatnot, and it was kind of a long wait because like you had to wait for like the 8 people to actually show up, and
yeah,
if
those are
there
the
wasn't 8 people,
on-demand side events.
yeah, those were never really any good. But this year that seemed to be awesome.
So, oh yeah, one difference with the on-demand side events, they only had them for Sunday for Modern and Legacy. So they focused
uh,
on just standard or joining the other tournaments because they had so many more tournaments. They're like, join those other ones. Don't join the on-demand one. Because the problem with the on-demand tournaments is that it's 1,500 yen, which is about $15. And
mm,
if you lose 0 and 2, you're out. So you just spend $15 and you're just done. Whereas at least with the $20 ones, you get a basic land and you get 3 rounds. So you can actually get some packs. Even if you win one match out of 3, you still get 2 packs, right?
yep,
So
that's exactly what I got.
so the on-demand side events, it's just losing two games really quickly and just being done. It's the worst feel bad ever. I came there to play. I just want to play, and a
Yeah.
single elimination tournament is not the best way. But they did have single round on demand events, 600 yen, single round. Like you just play a 2 out of 3 with somebody, um,
Mm,
and the winner gets 3 packs. The loser gets 1 pack. So it's pretty much the equivalent of buying 2 packs and just gambling whether you lose or get one. But it's a really quick way to just be like, you know what? I just want to play one round really quick. I have an hour before my next event. Let's just play a 2 out of 3, get a couple packs, or not get a pack, lose, just have fun. So just having those events are much better than just focusing on the on-demand side events. Single elimination is really not the way to go. I would never suggest it, especially
mm.
with such a high entry cost. If it was 500 yen, fine, I'll go rejoin another one really quickly. But $15 is kind of a lot to swallow for just losing and getting nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was the first time that I had gone to a GP in quite some time. The last big tournament I went to was Eternal Weekend that was out in Yokohama, and of course they didn't have these big Magic Fest type side events or anything like that. It was just the main event, and then there was a
Right.
lot of shopping and people hanging out. But this was the first GP or Magic Fest that I'd been to in I don't know like 2 years or something like that. And this I hadn't really ever had a chance to like play in some main events. And playing in the Legacy, doing the Legacy Double Up event on Saturday morning, it was interesting to kind of see how the prizes worked and all of that other stuff. I don't think like I'd ever experienced that before, and I was kind of amazed because I went on the Double Up, I went 2-1, and I went downstairs to go pick up my packs, and there was an entire prize center where they had all of the packs from all of the different sets of standard available for you to pick, and you could pick any number of whatever pack, whatever
Yeah, that's
set you wanted.
much better than before. Before it was just the two newest. Last GP I went to, it was either Ixalan or Rivals. You didn't have a
Mm.
choice of getting like M19 or whatever.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I picked all of what was
Right.
the rivals of no, sorry, what's the blue one?
Um,
I can't even remember the standard set's names. It's
Ravnica,
Guilds of
Elite,
Ravnica and
Guilds, and Allegiance.
Allegiance. That's right, Ravnica Allegiance. I just slammed 12 packs, but at the time I was telling the Japanese guys I was with that we had arrived with that in America they have like a prize wall or something like that, and you can use the prize ticks to get like standard cards and stuff like or single cards. I mean to say. And they were actually floored by that because you can't do that in Japan at all. It's only strictly packs.
Yeah, I would have loved a prize wall because I would have just sat there and just grinded events, just trying to get like one big prize. Because to me, packs are worthless. Whenever I
Yeah.
open packs, I tend to not get the good cards because it's just such a low chance of getting them. Sometimes
Mhm.
you get lucky and get 1 or 2 good cards in a big stack, but generally it's just not worth opening. It's not worth getting them. They're pretty much worth nothing to me. So if I could get a single card, which is how I would spend my money anyways, that would just be so much more value for my tournament.
I'm always of the opinion that if I spend my money on a single card that I know I'm going to use, it's going to be much better than buying however many packs and hoping to get the card that I want to play with.
And
But
for our listeners, I just want to stress this one point, that buying a single card, playing it alone is value. You're getting value out of just playing the card. So even if you're thinking like, oh, this card's expensive, but like, oh, and 2 months later, I won't be able to sell it for as much as I bought it for, you still got your value because you put it in your deck and you used it. And I think that's one important thing that people who buy packs and don't buy singles forget. They're like, yeah, well, like when you buy a single, you only get one card. When you get packs, there's a chance you can get more. It's like, no, alone, if you're using this card, you get value out of it. So if you think like that, that can kind of change your mind about the economics of the Magic the Gathering game.
well, I think a certain amount of people actually liked the whole gambling experience of, oh, it could be anything, it could be the greatest card in the world, it could be the shittiest card in the world, and I won't know until I open up the pack.
Right? You can get a Black Lotus or a box. The box might have a Black Lotus. You
Yeah,
never know.
exactly.
Take the box, right? Like,
Well, you and I know what we want. I always want the single card because I don't like gambling. I don't like playing the odds. I want to have what I want. Anyway, so how did your tournaments go at Magic Fest Kyoto? You have a
um,
couple of stories you want to tell.
yeah, actually, overall, I had very few losses. So on day one, I played only Legacy. I used my Blue-White Stoneblade deck.
Hmm.
And I went 2-0 draw, 2-0 split in the first tournament. I beat High Tide game one. Or match one. So game one, he high tides me out and beats me. So then I remember High Tide says all islands, not just his islands. So what I do is in game three, he casts High Tide. And I'm sitting there with a hand with like Counterspell, Snapcaster, Force of Will, whatever. And he goes, High Tide. I'm like, resolves. And he's like, oh, okay. High Tide, 1 mana floating. And I'm like, resolves. And he's like, tap these 3 islands. I have 10 mana floating. And I'm just like, you do. So he tries to cast
Good for
Time
you.
Spiral. Tries to cast Time Spiral. And of course, I'm like, tap one of my islands because I have like 4 or 5 at this point. Okay, 1 blue mana floating, counterspell it. And because I had so much mana, I was able to actually out counterspell him. I'm like, man, High Tide, when you're using your mana and your cards for High Tide to give me all the mana I need to cast all the counterspells I have, like, this is great. And then he tried to Flusterstorm the counterspell. So I'm just like, sure, I'll pay the 4. I'll tap this other island.
Tap.
It's the one that was floating. And he's like, man, High Tide sucks against blue decks. And I'm like, yeah, it does. So that was really fun. I haven't played against High Tide in forever. I was hoping not to lose to it because really it's not a great deck for the reasons that I just told you. It's bad against blue. And another thing is I resolved Stoneforge turn 2 games 2 and 3 and got a Batterskull. And he didn't counterspell because High Tide only cares about just High Tide resolve. So they don't run counterspell. They run Flusterstorms and stuff like that. And defense grids, whatever. So Stoneforge resolves turn 2. Turn 3, does he do anything I care about? No, put in Batterskull. So now I have a clock, and I am 100% guaranteed that Stoneforge is going to resolve and give him a clock, because High Tide can't kill turn 3. Like, okay, yes, it can. You High Tide, and then you turn about yourself, and then you Time Spiral, and then you get everything you need. But, like, really, let's be serious. Like, especially if I'm holding a Force of Will, High Tide's not going to kill on turn 3.
I think I'll tap my two islands, hard cast Force of Will.
Yeah, great. So all of those are reasons why just High Tide's not good. Too many decks are too fast, and if High Tide spends the first 4 turns not doing anything, then yeah, it's not gonna do too well. But that was really fun. I beat Storm the next match because I decided to sideboard in my favorite card ever, Lavinia. So I sideboarded in 2 Lavinias, and Vendilion Clique him at end of turn. I see he's holding a Massacre. He has 3 lands. He can't even cast it. So he has Massacre, like Xantid Swarm, and a couple other things that don't matter. I take the Xantid Swarm because I actually do have counter spells. But the great part is that he was running Daze. He actually dazed me game 1 out of something. And he had dazes, but with Lavinia out, he can't cast Daze. He can't cast Massacre for free. And even if he pays 4 mana for Massacre, I'm sitting there with Spell Pierces. So I'm just like, whatever, Spell Pierce it. And Lavinia is just beating for 2. He just could not do anything. Like this card that generally is only used in Vintage just made a match that's extremely difficult for my deck very, very winnable. So it was a great feeling. And Lavinia is my favorite card that's been printed in quite a few years. So
so you were facing off with a Storm deck that was running Daze?
Yeah, because sometimes
I don't think I'd ever heard of a Storm deck running Daze.
A Daze can give you just enough of a boost to counter a Force of Will or something that or it can stop them from casting something that really matters. You know, like they might try to tap out and do something crazy like, oh, well, Storm doesn't run counter, so I'm going to tap out and like do this thing. And then you're just like, oh, by the way, Daze. And it's like, oh.
Well, it seems kind of a nombo when you're trying to, discard your hand in order to use Infernal Tutor.
That's why not many Storm decks run Daze. It's kind of one of those things that if it catches the opponent by surprise, it can be amazing, but it can also just be completely terrible.
It just seems like you're casting your Infernal Tutor, and
that guy also ran main deck Empty the Warrens.
Okay.
And I had a Snapcaster with the GTA game 1, and I attacked. GTA had 4 counters. He blocks with 10 goblins. He doesn't block with 9 goblins. He blocks with 10 goblins. I'm like, all right, well, just pump Snapcaster to a 10-9 and put 2 counters on GTA. And then I passed the turn, and then end of his turn, I cast another Snapcaster and won. But yeah, and then thankfully I split game 3 because I would have played against Dredge, and he would have won game 1. I have Containment Priest, I have Surgicals, I have things I can do, but we were both hungry, just wanted to get food, so we split 24 packs. Not bad.
Seems good.
Yeah, day 2 I played Vintage. I did pretty well. Again, I 3-0'd. We did 2-0 split. But I still said, okay, no, this time I actually want to play and do a proper 2 out of 3 as if we're playing. And Lavinia shut the guy down completely. Like I managed to strip mine his other land, Swords of Plowshares, his Deathrite Shamans, Lavinia out. He couldn't play Moxen. He couldn't do anything really. So that was pretty great. And that happened both the games. So I 3-0'd Vintage. I lost 1 game to a Pyromancer deck. My own fault. And then day 2, or the third day, was the big Vintage tournament, the one where the top 8 go to a single elimination bracket. I made top 8. My deck has a great Oath of Druids matchup because I run 2 main deck Disenchant. And again, Lavinia is just great against a deck like that. So first round I play against Death Shadow, where they just try to kill their life total so quickly that they can just swing with Death Shadows. And they use Spoils of the Vault and Tarnished Citadels, which is where you tap for 3 life to get 1 mana of any color, and Street Race and, Moxen, Lotus, whatever, just to get things out fast. But I run 4 Swords of Plowshares. He kills himself game 1 because he spoils the vault for Death Shadow and didn't find it. But, Swords of Plowshares game 2, killing 2 of his Death Shadows, it's over at that point. So that was game 1. And then my second and third round were both Oath of Druids deck, and the exact same thing happened, where Lavinia was just amazingly good. So I kept a Lavinia count over the weekend, which is when my opponent casts a spell and I say, okay, that's countered by Lavinia because of her, if you don't pay mana to cast it, it's countered clause, the second part of her text. So it happened.
So wait. Just for our listeners, because you can put up the picture of Lavinia now or whatever, but let's go over what the text she says. So what does she say?
All right.
I'm sorry, I caught you off guard, didn't I?
Yes, I have the exact card right here. So she says, each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. So if they have
no
3
Force
lands,
of Will, no Massacre, none of those,
unless they have 3 lands or 4 lands or 5 lands or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the second part, it says, is the most important one. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So this means all 0-cost spells are countered. Lion's Eye Diamond, Moxen, Mana Crypt, whatever. And also spells that have an alternate cost, like Massacre, Force of Will, or spells that are paid in Phyrexian mana, like Surgical Extraction or Mental Misstep. So
pretty much a huge cross section of all vintage playable cards are pretty much either countered or may not be cast.
right. So 4 times in the tournament, a player cast mental. This is over the course of the 2 days, over the course of the weekend in tournament. A player casts Mental Misstep, paying 2 life while Lavinia is out, and I say, okay, that's countered. You just Kolaghan's commanded yourself. You just
here's the
two
question
damage
though.
and discarded.
Here's the question though. Did they have the mana to pay for it? Because if they had the mana to pay for it, then they really feel stupid because they could have just cast it using their lands.
A couple times. One guy did, but he had Forbidden Orchard. So he would have given me a spirit token, which he didn't want to do. So that's why he paid the 2 life. Because otherwise he would have said, tap, give you a spirit, Mental Misstep. But he didn't. He said, okay, Mental Misstep. And I said, Lavinia counters that. And then he went, Judge. And Judge said, yeah, that's countered. And 2 times over the weekend, my opponent, with 5 lands out, Force of Wills, pitching a card, and that gets countered by Lavinia. Twice in tournament, they have 5 lands out.
You just had to tap your mana. You just had to tap your mana and keep the card in your hand.
Yep. Well, one case he didn't have the mana open. Another case, he was so excited about, he was like, I can't cast Force of Will until I get to 5 mana. He was so excited. He's like, finally, I have 5 lands. Yes, I can cast Force of Will now. And then he casts
but he pitches a card anyway.
And then he casts it pitching Dak Faden, and I'm just like, Lavinia counters that, and he's like, Lavinia is a really, really good card, and I'm like, yeah. So I won every single match that happened in, every single game that happened in, I won. The best was I cast Lavinia. My opponent, they have a few lands, and a Mox Ruby is the only thing that they have up. So I have Lavinia. I go, well, if they only have a Mox Ruby up, Snapcaster. And they're like, resolves. And I'm like, Ancestral Recall. He's like, Mental Misstep. Yes. And I'm just like, I just point to Lavinia, So my opponent was like, they were so excited. Oh, I saw Ancestral. I got a Mental Misstep that they completely forgot about Lavinia, which I just cast about 10 seconds earlier. So I'm like, okay, that's countered, and I still draw 3, right? And he's like, oh, yeah, that's why you did that the way you did. I'm like, yeah. Because I didn't want you to untap and then be able to pay mana for it. But again, this happens in tournament. And again, I'm never ever I never try to be like sneaky about hiding Lavinia. I'm always very straightforward. If they have any questions about Lavinia, I will answer them truthfully.
Well, you were giving me highlights of your day 3, and I related to you because you were just messaging me in between rounds of what the current count was of the screw ups, and I was relating to the greatest tournament report ever made by Ned Leeds, who had what was the card that
Suppression
basically
Field.
Suppression Field. That's what it was. He had
With
Suppression Field and moats. Yeah, and Chalice and all the other cards.
Even
and
Mind Sensor, stuff like that. It's just a hate bears. It was a hate deck, and he would just.
Well, I think it was Angel Stompy because I think he was playing Baneslayer Angel, and that was pretty much it. Yeah, and so it was funny because he kept a count of how many times people screwed up and
how many
giving me the count.
Like judge call count, and one guy got judge called so many times that he just like raged and left the tournament. And all his cards were in a foreign language too. So
all his cards were Chinese.
That's even more tilting that like you can't read his cards, but you have to like, if you can't read the card, you should clarify, know what it does. But that was great, and that's inspiring to me.
It was a count of game rule violations. That's what it was, because it was it was game rule violations 6 by the end of the day.
I had Lavinia count 6, and like there's opponents who I had an opponent who in Legacy she was running Red Stumpy, and she cast City of Traders, set it aside, set an Ancient Tomb or whatever, tried to cast Chalice on 1, and I'm just like, you can't actually cast it. As much as I would love for that to just be straight up countered, like you can't actually cast it. So she was like, "Oh, okay," and she put it back in her hand, and then I just spell pierced it the next turn. But yeah,
Seems fair. All right. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit
yeah,
about my tournament.
yes, I would love to hear. Tell me highlights of your legacy events.
So I did the double up legacy, and as I said, I went 2-1. I had a slight misplay, and maybe you can help me figure out whether or not it was an actual misplay or not. But round 2 was my loss, and it was against not Turbo Depths. That's what it was. And basically, I had a flipped Delver and a Terramander in play, and my opponent was about to get the Dark Depths combo off, and I had a Force and a Delver in hand, and they were at, I believe, 5 life. And what my plan was to try and just push through the next, little bit of damage in order to get them to over the line. So I decided to play my Delver, and my plan was that if the Delver next turn didn't flip, I could block the 20/20 that he would make. But if it did flip, then I would be able to attack, and hopefully be able to, whatever the spell was, use to basically play against. And what ended up happening was the Delver, of course, did not flip. I revealed a land. I didn't reveal it. I saw a land, and so I put it back into my hand, and I had 3 lands in play. And so I passed the turn, and during his next turn, he had the 20/20 in play, and he crop rotated for a Sajiri step, gave it protection blue, and swung for the win. And so I was debating about whether or not I should have kept the Delver in hand in order to hold back and force the crop rotation. And
well, okay, you said you had 3 lands in play. How many instants and sorceries were in your graveyard?
not enough to make Terramander a 5/5. It was, I think it was maybe 2 spells short, something like that.
Because if you cast Force of Will, that adds 1. And then if you were able to set the land, even if you attacked with the 20/20, you block with the Delver, you untap, set a land, and then Terramander turns into a 5/5. And if they're at 5, you could have attacked.
I think I might have needed at least one more spell in the yard to even use all 3 lands to make that happen. So yeah, I think I was a little bit of ways off for that.
Well, because you have to look at it one of 2 ways. One way is, okay, there's a difference between doing a move that just slows down you losing or doing something that potentially wins. Like what you did was, of course, more of a gamble in a sense, but by not playing the Delver and he's just attacking you with the 20/20, you could stay alive, yeah, but you're not going to win. That's not going to get you the win, right? Think about it. Like if he has the Merit Lodge, like you said, the only out that you have is to bounce it back, right?
Yeah.
Or to bolt him if you get lucky. But like
during that game, he duressed me turn 1, and the only bounce spell I was playing in my deck, Echoing Truth, was in my opening hand. And I was looking at my hand of 7 as I revealed to him for the duress, and there was like a Brainstorm, a Force of Will, and a Delver, and a couple of lands, and the Echoing Truth. And I'm just like, he'll probably take the Brainstorm and just make it so that my Delver is not going to flip for the rest of the game. And he looked at me really, really strange. He's like, oh, Echoing Truth. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I'll take that. And that was when I realized he wasn't on Storm. He was on Depths. And I'm just like, oh, no.
Oh, that was game 1?
That was game 1, yeah. Game 2.
Well, game 1, do not force the duress. Just let him take it, because like.
Oh no! I didn't. Yeah. I
There's,
revealed the Force and Brainstorm and Echoing Truth and a Delver and a couple of lands.
There's no way that you knew.
Yeah.
So I don't think that was a misplay, because if it worked, if the Delver did flip, you would have won probably, right?
I believe I would have gotten just enough damage through. I mean, had it flipped to, like, say, a cantrip or something like that, I definitely would have.
Bolt.
Yeah, or a bolt. We would have gotten there, but unfortunately.
So you played to the most, if this works, I win, as opposed to, well, this could keep me alive another turn, but in the long run, I'm still going to lose to a 20/20, right?
Yeah.
So like you probably made the right play. And also, like, who's gonna expect that, right? Who's gonna expect crop rotation into protection? Like
Well,
yeah. I mean, like, he has it, but you can't always be like, oh well, he's definitely got crop rotation. I have to hold up force of will because I know he's gonna do that and I die this turn. It's like you
yeah.
played your outs, and your out at that point was not waiting with a force of will from what was on
Yeah.
board.
He had the combo pieces in play. He had not made the 2020 yet, and I knew that if I was swung with two flipped Delvers and the Terramander, and I had some sort of spell, I probably could have like forced enough damage through to get him. But
I mean,
because
that's your kind of
didn't
deck. That's
flip,
what you do.
yeah. Game two, I lost just because like he basically did the exact same thing. He just thought seized and duressed me and took all of my interaction. He needled Wasteland, and I drew nothing but lands. I just land off the top, and I was just like, okay, well, I guess my deck's not going to do anything today.
I mean, if that deck gets the nuts and you don't get anything, there's nothing you could have done. And
Yeah,
again, it's hard to predict. Like, well, I know my deck's going to give me 4 lands in a row, so I have to play. There's no way to know that. And if you just get 4 lands, especially if you're drawing wasteland after wasteland, and he hasn't needled, you just have to go like, okay, you got it.
yeah. But that first tournament actually paid off anyway because I got it. I got those 12 packs for going 2-1, and then I popped them like you suggested and pulled the Krasis,
You did. You got the
which
Hydra.
which I immediately sold and then went into another tournament based on the winnings. So
How did the second tournament go for you?
it did not go very well. Round one, game one, I mulled a hand of 7 that was 5 lands, Terramander, and Light Up the Stage into a 6 that was 4 lands and pretty much the same 2, pretty much unusable spells, and then a 5 with no lands, and then a 4 with no lands. And so that was not a great way to start the tournament. Um, I basically just kept drawing cards and just watching my opponent play so that I knew what he was playing. Game two, he boarded as if I was combo. I think he assumed I was Reanimator or something like that. And I basically just ran him down with Delvers real quick.
Yeah, he's like, there's no way that a guy's gonna multi 4 with a fair deck, right?
Yeah, well. But game three just did not break in my favor. And yeah, he was Grixis control, but he had a very, very, very slow clock. But like he was dropping things like Liliana and just random other things that just kind of tore my stuff up. So
I mean, like, it's Grixis control sometimes gets there. Their control deck, sometimes they have the right answers, and when they do, that deck is near unstoppable. It's
yeah.
when they don't have the right answers to what you're doing that they have trouble. Like when they have a Lil of Last Hope and you have a TNN out, they're like, this deck sucks. But when they have a Liliana the Veil and you have only a TNN out, they're like, this deck is great.
Yeah.
You know.
Round two was Burn, and of course, UR Delver versus Burn is never a really fun game to play.
Yeah, the thing about Burn is that the all of their whole deck, which is burn spells, they can go to face, or if they're like, oh, that creature is a threat, I'll just throw it to the creature this time. They already have ways to kind of answer whatever you're doing. And with probably no life gain and spell piercing has to be used very sparingly, they drop a single Eidolon and you're pretty much done.
That's pretty much what he did. Game two, he dropped Eidolon, and I had to take 2 to the face in order to ponder to find a bolt, which I was lucky. I found one on the top 3, and I bolted it, and then he immediately dropped another Eidolon, which I had to then bolt as well. But like I was just too far behind by that point.
At that point, you're down 2 cards and 6 damage, and he's just like, yeah, I'll just throw a few more spells to your face, and you can't counter them all, so...
Yep.
That's not a great matchup.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't have to play against Burn.
Burn is not fun. Round 3 of that second tournament, I got matched up against a guy who I came to the tournament with, who I know always plays Eldrazi. And I was not looking forward to that last match, but it actually turned out okay. His deck kind of tripped over its own mana. A Lucky Wasteland got me there game 2 and game 3, and Delver does what Delver does. You play it on turn 1, you flip it, and you just go ride it to victory. And
Yeah, I was watching that match, and your Abrades put in really good work. It's great. Creature removal against Eldrazi is great, and that kills Chalice and that kills Thorn. Like that really puts in work. Whatever the threat is at the moment in that deck, Abrade can help. Even if it's a Thought-Knot, you can still block with something and then Abrade it and still get rid of it.
yeah, well, like a young Pyromancer token plus a Braid can sometimes get there with it.
Yeah.
I really liked the changes that I made to the deck, because I changed the deck is supposed to run a one of main what is it called? No,
Vapor Snag.
Vapor Snack, that's right. And I changed that up to an Echoing Truth just simply because I wanted to have the versatility to use for Chalice decks. And I think I got to use it at one point to knock a artifact off the board, which was very, very useful. The other changes I made were in the sideboard. It's supposed to run 1 red Elemental Blast, 2 Pyroblast. I ran straight 3 Pyroblast just because I wanted to be able to use the Pyroblast to make Pyromancer tokens. And one of the only 2 light up the stages that I was able to cast during the course of the day, I flipped land and Pyroblast. And so basically what I did was I played the land for the turn, and I had a young Pyromancer in play, and he cast Liliana the Last Hope, targeting my Pyromancer, and I'm like, well, better use the Pyroblast. So I used the Pyroblast, getting 1 extra token, and he didn't have a blue permanent in play, but it worked out perfectly anyway.
You still got to swing and then bolter or something.
Well, because I already had, I think, 2, maybe 3 tokens in play already. He upticked her to kill the Pyromancer. I Pyroblasted her to make a 4th token, and then killed her, and it was perfect. It was exactly what I needed.
Yeah, because otherwise you would never have been able to catch up.
Yeah, that was against Grixis Delver, I believe. So
good, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, if you're not running Pyromancer or Mentor, then I would say definitely the 2-1 split. But if you're
just for surgical reasons,
Pyromancer, just run the Pyroblast. Just don't worry about the surgical extraction.
Yeah.
And if they're bringing in surgical against you, that's really not a good choice, to be honest. Like your deck.
I think the other spell that you always want to watch out for and split them up with is Cabal Therapy. But like, what are the odds that you're going to be playing Dredge?
Yeah, or like, if they're a Cabal Therapy deck, chances are you're not boarding in your Pyroblasts.
Well, I mean, there's some
Storm
utility.
Well,
I was thinking no, Dredge. I was thinking Dredge because they have Breakthrough, and countering a Breakthrough is definitely in your wheelhouse.
I still wouldn't run Pyroblast. The only reason I would run Pyroblast is to Pyroblast my own Delver to get rid of their bridges.
Which is a valid play. I mean, come on.
I'd rather have better cards. Just saying. Just saying. I mean, just saying. All right.
All right. We're getting close to an hour, and I think that we still want to just talk a little bit about the shopping.
Yeah.
Or do we want to save that for next time?
Let's talk about the shops.
Okay.
So, the shopping, right? The shops.
Yeah.
Not the slops, right? The shops.
Oh well, yeah. We could talk about Mason raging at the second tournament. Just that second game against Burn was just made me nuts.
Let's not talk about slops. Let's talk about the shops. So so how were the vendor booths this year? What did you think about them at GP Kyoto?
I liked them. I always like shopping around at the vendor booths in Japanese GPs. I've never been to an American GP, to be quite honest, so I don't have any comparison to make in that regard. But I always like flipping through the Japanese binders just because like damaged cards, scratched cards, cards with a little bit of whitening to them, they're always discounted to so cheap I also love looting through their boxes and stuff like that because they'll just like place out boxes with like stuff that's marked down at like 20, 30 cents, and you can
Yeah, there
flip
was
through
one
and you can
store.
always find.
Yeah, it's one store that we went to. It was really, really good.
Yeah, what was that?
They
Famicom,
had,
wasn't it?
yeah, it's a store called Famicom. It's in Tokyo. They gave me their business card, which I have
Oh, that's right. They did
somewhere.
hand that out. I should actually look to see if
Um,
they've got a website.
but that store was amazing. So they have this box, those just four
A
rows.
thousand count long boxes. Yeah.
Yeah, just four rows of just a bunch of cards and sleeves, and the prices were insane. I'm talking two, three, sometimes $4 or $5 cards marked down to 30 cents, 50 cents. You know,
Yeah.
a dollar for $5 cards. Like not all of them were in perfect condition, but still, when you're getting, you know, like I'm getting underground rivers at 30 yen each. I was
Mhm.
finding attunement, Urtai Wizard Adepts, Darkest Hours, which are $5 now for 30, 50 cents each. Just all these amazing EDH cards. They had Dazes for 80 yen each, which is like less than a dollar for new Dazes and old Dazes. Old
Mhm.
Hydroblast for 30 cents each. They just had a
Not
ton
bad.
of great stuff. And they weren't like, oh no, you can only buy 5 cards from the box. No, they're just, I would just go there in the morning, because they restocked it every day. So their Friday selection was different from their Saturday, which is different from their Sunday. So I go there
Wish I could
Friday
have gotten there
morning.
first thing, man. Jeez.
I got there Friday. I was waiting in line when the GP was opening because they open at 10 on Friday. And I walked around to some of the stores and I noticed that store pretty quickly. And I was like, oh my gosh, this box is amazing. And someone was like, hey, are you going to restock this box? And they're like, we will restock it tomorrow and Sunday. So I was like, all right, I'll get there early Saturday, early Sunday.
I was also tickled by that store just because they had their staff was like a whole bunch of like 40 something ladies who like they looked like they had never really played the card game, that they had no idea what all of these guys were doing. And meanwhile, there was an English speaker who was looking for a non-foil Zendikar spell pierce, and he comes up to the ladies and he's asking them for that card, and they have no idea what he's talking about. And so I did like some quick translation for him, and I translated to the ladies, and they were just like, "Oh, you speak such good Japanese! Oh my God!" I'm just like, "No, no, no, don't worry about it." And then I just go right back to my shuffling through the cards.
Yeah, like sometimes the vendors, there was one vendor, I believe, all the guys working there were like Italian or something. And yeah, their English was definitely better than their Japanese.
Yep.
But they accepted 50% extra trade. So they would give you a number in cash, and then they'd be like 150% of that. That's how much you'll get in trade here. Their prices were a little expensive, but what they did have was a bunch of beat up duels, or not duels, a bunch
Mm.
of beat up fetch lands from Onslaught, blue ones. I was
Oh
getting,
snap!
beat up foreign flooded strands for like 2,200 yen. Beat up polluted deltas for 2,400 yen. And I'm okay with that because it's from Onslaught. It's the old borders. They look nice.
You get some old commentados,
Yeah, contaminados is what they're called.
contaminados. That's what they're.
Delta Contaminado is the
Delta de
Portuguese one,
contaminado.
I believe.
The how do you say yes show?
I mean, I just have gigantic stacks of stuff I got at the GP. I'm having a hard time finding anything in particular right now, but
Well, there was a Dragon who was selling a whole bunch of containment priests for 350 that we kept buying more and more of just because card is insane.
you want to hear a funny story? They're selling them for 300 each on Sunday.
Oh god damn it, dude. So you bought what, 8 more?
Nah, I didn't. I
Uh,
didn't buy any more, but yeah. So I got a bunch of foreign deltas. There's so this one is Delta Contaminado. I
did you get
have
any Germans?
no Delta
Uh,
Incarnado. I have Estudie Pollue, which is French, I
Estudia
believe,
Polluted.
and a polluted delta, which is boring old English. So
Why you gotta be boring, dude? Don't be boring.
just middle school is encouraging me to buy old bordered cards. So I bought some old
Ah,
bordered Onslaught cards.
I see. Well, probably the best pickup I got was the one Sylvan Library, I got a Big Magic for 1,800 yen, which was a slam dunk buy. It was their last English one that they had, and I suddenly realized, oh wait, that card spiked. Maybe there's going to be some cheap prices. So I just wandered around until I found an English one for reasonable, and I was just like, mine. So there's that.
I got this one for 1,400 yen.
Oh, nice.
Japanese, but I mean 5th edition Sylvan Library. You know, for less than $15 for a card that's up to like 50, 60 now, I'm all right with it, even if it's in Japanese.
Those black border ones, I think, are the ones of the hotness.
EMA ones look nicer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got up to about an hour now. So I think that maybe we should probably try and end it here.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So what did you think of my last sign off from the last episode?
It was strange, but lovable.
It was strange. It was strange but lovable.
Yeah.
So that should not be my catchphrase. Have you had time to work on a new catchphrase yet?
Oh, no bubbles is the best.
No bubbles is the best. I once knew a monkey named Bubbles.
Was he the best?
He was not the best.
It's because no bubbles are the best.
All right.
All right.
Sayonara, Rob.
Sayonara, Mason. Take care.
Later.